Welcome back to bringing Jesus back into focus. I had to write a Gospels translation because the translations of the Gospels that we have after 1700 years have been unfortunately altered. There's been a lot of cutting and pasting going on, particularly in the Matthew Gospel, and the apocalyptic overlays, which are all false, which is a paper trail that leads you to the book of Revelation, which is a stinking, filthy, slanderous book placed in the back of the teachings of Jesus of love and non-violence and the spiritual loving creator that he was at one with, and which we all have spiritual bodies filled with love only. So the true creator is not Yahweh, because Yahweh is a two-headed God. The Jewish God Yahweh is not the divine source of inspirational power that Jesus was at one with. He was at one with a pure source of love and nothing else. He said so himself. His words stated this divine source in this other dimension, this other world. It's a spiritual world. We have spiritual bodies like angels. The body of flesh does not rise from the dirt or the earth. Forget that. That's a Jewish overlay put in to cover up the fact that he appeared to the disciples in his spiritual body only. So I've rewritten the Gospels to just try to help adjust the perversions and the distortions being taught by all the Jewish Christian churches. I was born into the Jewish Christian Catholic Church, but I left when I was 16 because of this Jewish poisoning, this Jewish problem. The Yahweh, the war god Yahweh, is a violent, murdering, killing, genocidal, thieving war god, the same as the Roman god Mars, the Egyptian god Sekhmet, and the Greek god Ares. The Yahweh one is Mars, the war god of Rome. It's the same god. It's the same brutal, killing, murdering, stealing other people's land. And that's what the Jews did, of course. You can look it up in the book of Joshua at Jericho, where they slaughtered everybody and stole their land. Then they've got another god, a god of love called Yahweh too. That's the only way you can talk about their deception. It's a dualistic religion. The Jewish religion is not monotheistic. Jesus is monotheistic. You only become at one with love. He is monotheistic. They are dualistic. The Jewish Bible, the Old Testament, shouldn't be in the Christian churches. There's no need for it anyway. You've got Jesus. Rip out the book of Revelation and burn it. So these Gospels of Jesus Unplugged are a better translation of the Gospels, and they simply open it up more into focus on his words, which transform you into a spiritual child to get ready to die, because everyone has to die. So you get ready through following him to go to this more beautiful, heavenly, spiritual world. So the back cover reads as such. Jesus taught we can all experience an inner spiritual awakening if we search for it. He called this the treasure hidden in the field of earth or flesh. This is our eternal spiritual identity, empowered only by the loving spiritual life force of our loving spiritual creator. Our bodies of flesh are only temporary and empowered by earthly things, and all flesh dies. Only our spiritual body and soul mind of love lives on to come into the presence of our loving creator, to reap as we have sown. His teachings and spiritual way of love and non-violence can help awaken us all into a new spiritual life here on earth, leading us to the heavenly spiritual world of love after death. Jesus taught we all have two different bodies with us in one, and he said that the spiritual body, being eternal, is the most important to be healthy and well in spirit. He provides us with the spiritual instructions to follow and become at one with, to be awakened and transformed into spiritual children of light of our loving spiritual creator in heaven. We then help awaken other children to become spiritual and bring peace and heavenly love to earth for all in need. These translations of the Gospels of Jesus remove the Jewish overlays and distortions placed over the universal teachings of Jesus and spiritual way of non-violence and love. Our mortal minds change from being dualistic into singular minds, viewing all things through the eye of love. Jesus said, if your eye is single, you will be filled with light. But if dualistic and divided, you will be filled with darkness. Jesus said not to mix his new spiritual way of understanding our loving Creator with the Old Testament dualistic God of the Jews, or you will lose the understanding of the one true loving spiritual Creator of our spiritual lives, and not realize who you really are as her spiritual children of only love on earth. These Gospels help focus his message of the loving way to reach the heavenly spiritual world from earth. So we're up to John the Baptist in chapter 8, and then we'll be moving into the general Gospel readings as well. So we'll read John the Baptist now. Just make this a little more concertinaed into here. There we are. Right, okay, let's get into this chapter 8, John the Baptist. So in this chapter I've basically brought the various events about John the Baptist's life throughout the Gospels, and I've brought them into just the one chapter. What I've tried to do is the first chapters, the first contents chapters, focused on certain very important topics, our loving spiritual Creator. So I drew some of the sayings of Jesus about our loving Creator's love is like the sun that rises on the good and the evil, like the rain that falls on the just and the unjust, to establish that Jesus is not a child of Yahweh. Yahweh is not a pacifist, loving God only. There are two Yahwehs there. As I said, it's a dualistic religion. Wake up, get over it, and move on. Stay with Jesus and the monotheistic, loving, heavenly world of only love. So then his words save us is a very important chapter, because he actually says 17 times in the Gospels, it's not his blood that saves you on the cross. That was to show you you've got two different bodies. He arose in his spiritual body, not his body of flesh. But he said 17 times, he who listens to my words and understands them will pass through death to life. 17 times. And in fact, at the Last Supper, he actually said to the disciples, you are all clean now because of the words I have given to you. He did not say, after they kill my body and my blood spilled on the cross, then you'll be free of sin and clean. He didn't say that. He never did. It was put on in Matthew only once. Matthew put that in. He said to the disciples, you are clean because of the words I have given you. He helps you understand how to be a spiritual child of love. If he didn't give us his words, I wouldn't know how to be loving, forgiving, generous, compassionate, not greedy. I wouldn't know how to live a spiritual life without his words. It's his words that save us. Very important chapter. Jewish Christians are teaching all sorts of perversions, wrong things, really distorting his spiritual, beautiful way of pacifism, which is pretty much the same as Buddha's, but again another higher level of helping others. Third chapter is Jesus taught we all have two bodies. Another chapter is children of light. The two bodies chapter is extremely important, and Jesus literally says we have two bodies, and it's in his words in the Gospels. But again, they don't teach you that. They overlook it, they whitewash it, they pass over it, and teach you a lot of gobbledygook some of the time. But they teach about his love, so don't get me wrong, There's love in all Jewish Christian churches, but they don't have to be Jewish anymore. Cut the Bible in two, stick the Jewish religion out on a shelf, stay with Jesus, rip out the book of Revelation and burn it, because it's a stinking, filthy book of slander, and get on with loving Jesus, becoming transformed, become like him. When you die, you'll move on to the beautiful spiritual heavenly world, which is another dimension. John the Baptist, chapter 8. So let's have a look at John's life, shall we? John 3:22-36. Jesus and his disciples then came into the land of Judea, and he remained there with them and baptized children there. And John the Baptist was also baptizing children in Aenon near Salim, because there was much water there. And some of John's disciples had a dispute with the Jews about ritual purification. So they went to John and said, Teacher, Jesus, who was with you beyond Jordan, about whom you have testified as being a child of the loving spiritual Creator on earth, is also baptizing, and everyone is going to him. And John answered, saying, a human can receive nothing unless it has been given to them from heaven. You have heard me tell you that I am not the Messiah, but have been sent before him. He who joins as one with the bride is the bridegroom, while the friend of the bridegroom, standing beside him, hearing his words, greatly rejoices because of the words of the bridegroom. Therefore my joy is full through hearing his words and being blessed by them. He must become greater while I become less. He who is at one with the spiritual heavenly world above is above all on earth. He who is of the earth is earthly and only speaks of earthly things. He who is at one with heaven is above all. And what he has come to know and understand he reports and shares freely with everyone, but no one receives his testimony. But anyone who does receive his testimony is sealed with our Creator's love and truth. For he who is at one with the loving Creator speaks the words of her, and our loving Creator gives the Spirit fully to all who wish to receive it. The loving spiritual Creator loves all of her children, giving all things into their hands. He who follows the spiritual way of the child of the loving Creator and becomes at one with it will have life everlasting. But he who does not believe in the spiritual way of our loving Creator and become at one with it will not experience full spiritual life, but remain captured by physical desires and the restraints of the material world. John the Baptist in prison, Matthew 11, 1-19. Herod seized John and put him in prison because John had said it was not lawful for Herod to take his brother's wife, Herodias, and for criticizing the evil things he had done. When John heard of the works Jesus was doing, he sent two of his disciples to ask him, "Are you the coming one, or do we look for another?" Jesus answered them, saying, "Go and tell John the things which you hear and see. The blind receive sight, the crippled walk, the lepers are made clean, the deaf hear, those who are dead to their spirit are awoken and raised up, and the materially poor have the good spiritual news given to them. Blessed is he who is not enticed into sin because of following me and my spiritual way." Jesus then said to the crowd about John, "What did you go out into the wilderness to see? A reed shaken by the wind? But what did you go out to see? A man clothed in soft garments? Behold, those who wear soft garments and live in luxury are in kings' houses. But what did you go out to see? A prophet? Yes, I tell you, and one much more than a prophet. Truly I say to you, there has not arisen amongst those born of women one who is greater than John the Baptist. Yet the least in the spiritual kingdom of heaven is greater than he." Thomas, saying 46, Jesus said, "No one is much greater than John the Baptist. Yet I say to you that whoever becomes like a little child will know the heavenly spiritual world and will become greater than John. And from the days of John the Baptist and henceforth the kingdom of heaven suffers violence, and the violent take it away from you by force. But what shall I liken this generation to? It is like children sitting in the town square calling to their companions, saying, 'We played the flute for you, and you did not dance. We were deeply grieved about what you were doing, but you saw no reason to lament.' For John came neither eating nor drinking, and they said, 'He has a demon in him,' while the child of humanity came eating and drinking, and they say he is a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. But wisdom is exhibited and declared by her children." John the Baptist is beheaded by Herod, Mark 6:14-29. The governor Herod heard reports about Jesus and thought it was John the Baptist, whom he had beheaded, and who must have arisen from the dead to have such wondrous powers. Herod had imprisoned John for publicly criticizing him about marrying Herodias, his brother's wife, and Herodias wanted him executed, but Herod feared the people because they thought he was a prophet from God. Herod himself thought John was a just and holy man and listened to him. But after the daughter of Herodias performed a beautiful dance before Herod during his birthday celebration, he promised her anything she desired. So her mother told her to ask for John's head on a platter. Although Herod was remorseful, he kept his word and had John beheaded, as she requested. Then his disciples came and took away the body and buried it, and went and told Jesus. When Jesus heard this news, he and the disciples departed from where he was by boat to a place in the countryside to be by themselves. Author. Mary, the mother of Jesus, was the cousin of the mother of John the Baptist and did visit her. By looking at the teachings of John the Baptist and how similar they are to those of Jesus, we have to conclude that they grew up often meeting each other on visits. It is probable that as they matured, they both had a deep sense of spiritual awakening to find the one true, loving, spiritual Creator, and discussed this with each other. John may have been the one who understood the new spiritual way that Jesus taught more than anyone else. This would account for Jesus being so despondent at the news of John's death. The one who he originally confided in and shared his new way of spiritual awakening and understanding with, before teaching it to others. Our loving Creator is only love. We must become her spiritual children of only love on earth. And that is the truth. So John the Baptist was very close to John. We can see it in his, I wish we had more of John's sayings, but we can see in his words, they're very similar to Jesus, if in fact identical. If you have two tunics, give one to someone who has nothing. If someone's hungry, share your food with them. If you're involved in work, be honest. Don't rob anybody. So it's a very much about clean your spirit. John, of course, baptized to cleanse children symbolically of their sins, which was a Jewish ritual. But he had a sort of broader understanding than the Jews. He was obviously linked in with Jesus to this more unified oneness of God, this loving, spiritual, creative life force and consciousness of love in another dimension, spiritual world. When you're there, it's as real as this world, but you haven't got bones and blood and flesh and these bodies that die and get hurt, and you certainly can't become an evil, satanic, murdering warmonger like so many of the satanic children in Israel, the Hamas children, the Russian children, Ukraine children, Iran children, all these murdering, dark, evil, satanic figures who have false identities. They've moved out of their spiritual identity, which is in them, but it's now covered in layers of death and destruction, which they then will undergo when their physical body dies, their body of flesh. They will then be in a living hell, and they'll undergo the death of everyone they've caused. So Netanyahu will die 70 to 80,000 times, along with the Jewish army, and the Russians the same thing. As many as they kill, that's how many times they're going to die after they die this time. Buddha would say they're going to be reborn 80,000 times and die a horrible death, just exactly the same way they've killed babies and women and elderly people and soldiers. Doesn't matter. They'll undergo the death that they caused. They don't believe this. They don't believe in life after death. None of them do. You know, they say, oh, Yahweh's our God, we're doing what God wants. Or Putin goes and does this sign of the cross in a Greek Orthodox church. I mean, he's a satanic child. He's Satan. He's a satanic child. Netanyahu's satanic. So they're not involved with the true loving spiritual Creator at all. They worship Satan. And that's their life, and that's their choice. They've chosen to be satanic and murder and kill. What can we do except tell them you're going to hell? Stop, repent, drop your guns, apologise to the whole world. Go home and love your family. And love your neighbours as yourself. But they don't listen, so all we can do is tell them. So that's the Gospel of John the Baptist. Or Gospel, I say, that's the chapter of John the Baptist in the Gospels. So he was a great friend of Jesus. He must have known, they must have shared a lot of discussions around the campfires, talking about his new understanding that Jesus was developing and eventually became spiritually enlightened. And John obviously knew he was ahead of him in his connection to the one divine loving spiritual Creator than he was. And he knew that Jesus was really opening up into this oneness of love. Coming out of the dualistic religion of the Jew, the two different Yahwehs, the two-headed God of Yahweh. It's a two-headed God. I'd say that's the most accurate way to describe Yahweh. It's not a monotheistic religion at all. It's got one mono body called Yahweh that the Jews cunningly called Yahweh, but then they stuck two heads on it, and they're two completely opposite gods. Filthy, stinking, dark, evil, murdering, thieving war god, genocidal. Have a look at what they did at Jericho, Nineveh, and other places. Then they've got this other God of love. Love your neighbour as yourself. If a foreigner is amongst you, love them as if they are Jewish. That's the God of love. The other God says, go down to Jericho, murder them all, kill them all, men, women and children, steal all their gold, silver and brass, bring it back to my temple and steal the land from them. They're two different gods. They're dishonest. Their religion is a dishonest religion. They're fooling themselves, and they're not going to fool me. I'm a Christian. I'm not interested in being a Jewish Christian, and Jewish Christians should cut the Bible in half and get rid of the Jewish religion. Get it out of our churches, please. That belongs in the synagogues, the Old Testament. Give it to the Jews. That's their business. That's their problem. And rip out the book of Revelation, because that's the book of Daniel. So John the Baptist would have been, I think, probably Jesus' most closest confidant. I'd say that. And the way, once he heard the news, he had to head off. He and the disciples he had to get away. He had to really, he would have been deeply grieved, I'm sure, by this really close friend, his mother's cousin's son. I think it's a second cousin, I'm not sure what you call it, but they obviously hung out together because their dialogues are parallel in generosity and love and care, and and not being materialistic. We know John the Baptist loved being out in nature. Jesus loved going out in nature. They were very similar. And it must have been a great blow to him when John died, because his disciples still didn't understand what he was saying, because they were heavily Jewish. They were still worshipping the two-headed God of the Jews. They thought Jesus was connected to this Yahweh God. He's trying to bring them out of that all the time. He's trying to help them understand, no, there's a different God. Don't try to mix this new wine into the old wine. Whatever you do, you'll lose the understanding of the loving one. So that's the story of John the Baptist in brief, along with a few other bits and pieces that were in the beginning. So we'll move on to the next chapter after this, which is the Beatitudes, quite a short chapter, and then we'll move into the Gospel readings of Matthew. So the main points I'd like to make that Jesus taught is that we all have two bodies. Every single human child in the world, Jew, Buddhist, Hindu, Muslim, atheist, Baha'i faith, Sikh, it doesn't matter. If you're a human being, you've got two bodies. The body of the flesh always dies and disintegrates, as Jesus' body did also. But he left in his awoken spiritual body, and we all have one. The question is, Jesus says, is your spiritual body alive? And then I say to him, how do I bring it alive? And he says it must be filled with the loving spiritual life force from above. You must be born again from above. If you haven't got the spiritual life force in you, Christopher, he'd say, and you're not living out of it now, you will not enter heaven when you die. So, and of course, if you're a warmonger, well, you're going to go into a hellish experience. It's just that simple. I'm sorry. Sorry for all those children. They're going to be screaming their heads off. Netanyahu, Putin, they're going to be screaming like you can't believe. Anyway, that's very regrettable for them. But we have to be children of heaven on earth, so we can't kill them. We can't pick up a gun like they are. They're satanic. The armaments industry is a satanic industry. So we don't get involved in that at all. A bit like the Amish in America, bless them, and the Quakers. These people and the Assyrian Christians, those are the three groups I know of, Mennonites. They won't get involved in killing other children, no matter what's happening, no matter what the war is, no matter who the evil invader is. They're going to heaven after they die, because they're not going to hurt another child of God. They're going to try to save them, tell them what they're doing is wrong, demonstrate against them, but they won't become beasts of the stinking flesh, covered in dark filth, like Netanyahu, Putin, the Israeli army, the Russian army. They're all stinking filth, and Hamas, and Iran, and Ukraine. They're all the same. They worship death. So what do you think they're going to get? Life in heaven, or a horrible experience of dying, death after death after death of every single child they've killed? That's just the way it is. And that's the way Buddha taught it for 400 or 500 years before Jesus. Buddha and Jesus were paralleled. You've got to clean your mind out, Buddha said. Jesus said you've got to clean the inside of your cup out, he said. That's where the problems are. He and Buddha understood this. They both had what's called the clear light mind experience, which is why Jesus said if your mind or your eye is single, you will be filled with light. He had the same experience as Buddha. Perfect equanimity towards everyone. A leper, a king, it didn't matter to Jesus. He knew you had a spiritual body the same as his if you just woke up to it. And we'd all be spiritual children, equal as he is, as loving children of this spiritual being in a beautiful heavenly world. And everyone's going to die, so you're either going to go there or not. One of the two. So it's best to try to be clean and spiritual and bring love into this world, because how else are we going to help this world? I mean, this world needs love from heaven. Children must never join the Army, Navy or Air Force. I advise all young people, don't go anywhere near those stinking organisations. They stink. Join a Coast Guard or a Border Patrol? Absolutely. You need those. Join the local police force? Absolutely. You need these children who deal with the criminals and the gangsters and these sorts of things. We need that sort of local enforcement of law against the children who are in your local country who are doing evil things. But the armaments industry, we can see what's happening. You know, Israel's murdered about 70, 80, 100,000 Palestinians. Hamas murdered 1,200 of Israelis' children. You know, Putin's killed tens of thousands. Ukraine have killed thousands of them. Iran are killing people. Israel's killing more people in Iran and Lebanon. It just goes on and on and on. If all the soldiers left those armies, Putin, Netanyahu, the head of Hamas, the leader of Iran, none of them could do anything. It's the soldiers that are really to blame. They're the evil ones, empowering these stinking, filthy, satanic leaders. And that's all they are. And Trump. Trump. Here, have as many guns and bombs as you want to murder and kill. And wipe out Gaza. I might build a resort there after you've finished doing that. I mean, what a disgusting, disgraceful man he is. But what can you do? These people love each other. He loves Putin. He loves Netanyahu. You can see they're all satanic. So, okay. If they want to go to hell, they can go there. Jesus said, I'm not going to stop you. I'll try to stop you. I'll try to bring you into love. But if you want to refuse that, go ahead. Go to hell. You'll regret it. So I say the same thing. You'll regret it. Heaven sounds like a nice place. One day, I pray, we'll meet there. If you're a child of love and non-violence, regardless of your religion or your background or no religion, but if you're love and non-violence, you are my brother and you are my sister on earth, but we're all moving towards heaven, you and I. We are brothers and sisters. We are children of the loving spiritual creator. Whoever you are, if you're love and non-violence and that's how you live your life here in this dangerous, evil world, you are in the spiritual family of heaven, and you will be there. Regardless of your religion, you must be love and non-violence. Of course, not all religions teach it as perfectly as Jesus did. For the first 300 years, all Christians were pacifists. That was destroyed by the corrupt church leaders in the 4th century under Constantine. It wasn't his fault the church leaders caved in under pressure from Constantine, so Roman soldiers could become Christian and go and kill. So they became Jewish Christians from then on, and they've been Jewish Christians ever since. I'm just a Christian though. I wish there was a Christian church in Australia that I could go to, but there aren't any. They're all Jewish Christians. They all think Yahweh is the God of Jesus. I try to explain to them, no, there's 2 Yahwehs there, don't say that. And then some of them say, oh, Jesus is coming back on the clouds to cause sickness and start wars and famine. I say, oh, blimey, you don't even know Jesus, do you? So what can you do? I try to tell them, but never mind. Some listen, some don't. Okay, make your way to heaven. That was John the Baptist chapter. On to the next exciting chapter episode, the Beatitudes. Bye.